The bright fluorescent lights of the Earth Bureau of Intergalactic Relations headquarters hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow across the polished conference table. Kyle Sparks shifted uncomfortably in his chair, tugging at the collar of his uniform. As a junior diplomat, he wasn't used to being in the spotlight, especially not with the fate of Earth's interstellar reputation hanging in the balance. Application denied, announced the flickering hologram of Ambassador Creel, the 7-foot-tall, blue-skinned representative of the Deathworld Alliance. His multiple eyes blinked in asynchronous patterns that Kyle had learned signified irritation. For the 17th time in as many cycles, Earth fails to meet our minimum qualification standards. Director Hosenfelder Crackstill, a weathered bureaucrat with more years in service than Kyle had been alive, merely sighed and made a notation on his tablet. Thank you for your consideration, Ambassador. We'll reapply next cycle with additional documentation. Additional documentation will not suffice. Creel's hologram flickered as he leaned forward. Earth simply does not qualify as a death world by any measurable standard. Your gravity is negligible. Your atmospheric toxicity is laughable. Your apex predators are quaint. Kyle felt his face burning. This was the 17th rejection, and Earth's standing in the galactic community remained embarrassingly low. Without Deathworld Alliance membership, they were relegated to the status of Garden World, a polite term for planets considered soft, comfortable, and ultimately insignificant in the cosmic hierarchy. Ambassador. Kyle found himself speaking before he could stop himself. With all due respect, I believe there's been a fundamental misunderstanding of Earth's qualification criteria. Director Crackstill shot him a warning glance, but Kyle was already committed. On most Alliance worlds, environmental dangers are constant and unavoidable, correct? Kyle continued, heart pounding. Obviously, Creel replied, multiple eyes narrowing. But on Earth, we've engineered solutions to most environmental threats, only to voluntarily seek out new ones. Humans don't just survive danger, we create it, monetize it, and turn it into entertainment. Kyle tapped frantically on his tablet, pulling up footage of wingsuit flyers threading through narrow mountain passes, free divers plunging into abyssal trenches, and storm chasers pursuing tornadoes. You're suggesting that recreational risk-taking qualifies as Deathworld credentials? Creel's tone was incredulous. I'm suggesting that any species that turns survival challenges into competitive sports demonstrates a unique evolutionary relationship with danger. Kyle replied, suddenly aware that the entire room was staring at him. We don't just endure chaos, we embrace it. A long silence followed. The hologram flickered as Creel consulted with unseen figures off-screen. This perspective is unorthodox, Creel finally admitted. The Alliance Council may require a demonstration. Director Crackstill straightened. What kind of demonstration? 2 Alliance observers. 1 standard Earth month. Your most extreme environments and activities. Creel's multiple eyes blinked in unison. If your species voluntarily engages with danger as you claim, prove it. The hologram dissolved, leaving the conference room in stunned silence. Director Crackstill turned to Kyle, his expression unreadable. Congratulations, Sparks. You've just volunteered to host 2 of the galaxy's most critical judges on a death-defying tour of Earth. If you fail, we're permanently classified as a pleasure garden, suitable only for interstellar tourism and novelty agriculture. Kyle swallowed hard. And if we succeed, then maybe, just maybe, the galaxy will finally take us seriously. The director gathered his materials. You have 1 week to assemble a team and prepare a month-long itinerary that will convince 2 aliens that humans are crazy enough to be worthy of respect. As the director left, Kyle stared out the window at the sprawling megalopolis below. Somewhere out there were people crazy enough to help him pull this off. He just had to find them. Absolutely not, said Tiffany Jo, barely looking up from the engine she was tinkering with in her chaotic workshop. Tools and spare parts covered every surface, and diagrams of what looked like impossible vehicles plastered the walls. Tiff, Please, Kyle pleaded. You're the best chaos engineer on the continent. Your vehicles have broken records in the Baja Death Rally 3 years running. 4, she corrected, finally glancing up. Grease smudged her cheek, and her dark hair was tied back in a practical knot. And that's exactly why I don't have time for your diplomatic dog and pony show. The Magma Run qualifying trials are in 6 weeks. Kyle leaned against a workbench. What if I told you the Alliance is providing a shipment of Centaurian meta-alloys for this project? The stuff that reshapes itself in response to stress? Tiff's wrench clattered to the floor. You're lying. Check my credentials. Kyle held up his bureau ID. This is a priority national mission with full resource clearance. Tiff narrowed her eyes, calculating. I want the alloys, plus full autonomy on vehicle design, and a guarantee that my name is first on the patent applications. Done, Kyle agreed, perhaps too quickly. And, Tiff added, I drive, no bureaucrats behind the wheel. The Bureau wouldn't have it any other way, Kyle assured her. So you're in? Tiff wiped her hands on a rag. I'm in, but we'll need a media presence, someone to document everything and spin it right for the aliens. I was thinking of approaching the traditional news networks. Amateur move, Tiff interrupted. You need Jane Nguyen. Kyle blinked. The conspiracy theorist? The one who claims the moon landing was real but the moon isn't? The very same. 20 million followers across 17 platforms. He's completely unreliable about facts but absolutely brilliant at creating narratives people want to believe. Tiff grinned. And he owes me for upgrading his drone fleet last year. Kyle hesitated. The Bureau prefers more official channels. Do you want to win over aliens or file a proper report? Tiff challenged. Jay can make anything look epic, dangerous, and quintessentially human. Plus, he's actually brave. Stupid, but brave. Fine, Kyle conceded. But how do we find him? Tiff picked up her phone. Easy. We tell him aliens are coming. Jane Nguyen's Truth Bunker turned out to be a surprisingly well-appointed loft in the Arts District, filled with cutting-edge recording equipment and walls covered in connected images and headlines that supposedly revealed patterns invisible to the normie eye. So you're telling me, Jay said, his eyes wide with excitement behind round spectacles, that actual extraterrestrials are coming to Earth, and you want me to document their tour for an interstellar audience? For an interstellar judging committee, Kyle corrected. This isn't tourism, it's an evaluation. Same difference. Jay waved dismissively. Either way, I finally get to prove my theories about alien-human interaction. Kyle shot a worried glance at Tiff, who merely shrugged. Let me be clear, Kyle said carefully. This is an official diplomatic mission. Everything we document needs to be factually accurate. Accuracy is subjective, Jay replied with a grin. But don't worry, I'm all about revealing the deepest truths, the ones the government usually hides. I am the government, Kyle reminded him. Exactly why you need me. Jay clapped his hands together. When do we start? Before Kyle could answer, his tablet chimed with an urgent notification. His stomach dropped as he read the message. Immediately, he said grimly. The Alliance observers have just entered Earth orbit. They'll be landing in 12 hours. Tiff's eyebrows shot up. I thought we had a week to prepare. Apparently, the Alliance decided to expedite the process. Kyle ran a hand through his hair. They're sending Vel of Drexen 5, a decorated warrior from a high-gravity world with atmospheric acid storms, and Prillinson, a senior documentation specialist. Perfect. Jay was already gathering equipment. A warrior and a nerd, classic buddy cop dynamic. This isn't entertainment, Kyle insisted, though he was increasingly unsure of that himself. This is about proving that humans deliberately seek out and conquer extreme conditions as a cultural practice. So, entertainment. Jay nodded sagely. Tiff was already on her phone. I'm calling in every favor I've got. We need the Chaos Caravan ready by morning. The what now? Kyle asked. The vehicle that's going to save Earth's reputation, Tiff replied without looking up. Jay, I need your drone swarm reconfigured for extreme environment documentation. Already on it, Jay assured her, fingers flying across multiple screens. I'm also seeding the story across my networks. By tomorrow, half the planet will be watching. Kyle felt a headache coming on. The Bureau wanted this to be a controlled demonstration, not a media circus. Both Tiff and Jay looked at him with identical expressions of pity. Kyle, Tiff said gently, you're trying to prove that humans are chaotic thrill seekers who turn danger into spectacle. How exactly did you plan to do that without, spectacle? Put that way, it made perfect sense. Kyle nodded slowly. All right, let's give them a show they'll never forget. The landing pad at the Bureau's secure facility was surrounded by more media than Kyle had ever seen gathered in one place. Despite the early hour, crowds pressed against the barriers, cameras flashed, and drones hovered overhead. How did they all find out? Kyle hissed to Jay, who was orchestrating his own array of camera drones with casual expertise. I might have mentioned something on my livestream last night, Jay replied without a hint of remorse. Just a teaser, really. A teaser that brought out every news organization on the planet? Jay grinned. I have a certain credibility in some circles. Before Kyle could respond, a ripple of excitement passed through the crowd. The Alliance shuttle was descending, a sleek, obsidian craft that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It touched down with barely a whisper, steam rising as its hull adjusted to Earth's atmosphere. A ramp extended, and two figures emerged. Vel of Drexen 5 was every bit the warrior Kyle had expected, nearly 8 feet tall, with dense musculature visible beneath a form-fitting envirosuit. His skin was a deep crimson, textured like volcanic rock, and his 4 eyes scanned the crowd with predatory awareness. The gravity on his homeworld was 2.3 times Earth standard, and it showed in his cautious, measured steps down the ramp. Behind him came Prillinson, considerably smaller but no less alien, covered in fine, shimmering scales that shifted color with each movement. The documentation specialist clutched what appeared to be an advanced recording device. 6 limbs moved with delicate precision, and a frilled crest rose and fell along the back of his elongated head. Welcome to Earth. Kyle stepped forward, performing the formal greeting gesture he'd hastily memorized from the Alliance Protocol Manual. I am Kyle Sparks, Bureau Liaison, and your guide for this evaluation. Vel regarded him with all 4 eyes. Your atmosphere is thin. His voice was surprisingly melodic, a translation device at his throat converting his native speech. I feel as though I might float away. And so bright, Prillinson added, crest flattening in what Kyle hoped was just discomfort rather than distress. Is it always this illuminated? This is actually quite early morning, Kyle explained. It gets much brighter at midday. Fascinating. Prillinson's recording device whirred. A species evolved to function primarily during high radiation periods. We also function at night. Kyle felt compelled to add, we're adaptable. So you claim, Vel replied, his tone making it clear how little he thought of Earth's challenges. I understand we are to evaluate your species' voluntary engagement with lethal conditions. Yes? Kyle gestured toward the facility exit, where Tiff was waiting with what could only be described as the most over-engineered vehicle Kyle had ever seen. If you'll follow me, we've prepared an itinerary that should demonstrate our point quite effectively. As they approached, Tiff straightened from where she'd been making last-minute adjustments. The Chaos Caravan behind her looked like a cross between a military transport, a luxury RV, and something from a post-apocalyptic fever dream, constructed from glossy black Centaurian meta-alloy. Its form seemed to shift subtly, even as they watched, adjusting to unseen stresses. This is Tiffany Zhou, our vehicle engineer and pilot. Kyle introduced, and this is Jay Nguyen, who will be documenting our journey. Jay was already circling the aliens with a handheld camera, his drone swarm maintaining a respectful but thorough coverage. The truth is out there, he announced, and we're going to find it together. Vel regarded the human with open suspicion. Your communication specialist lacks formality. That's part of our charm, Tiff interjected, extending a grease-stained hand. Welcome to Earth, where we turn survival into an art form. To Kyle's surprise, Vel clasped Tiff's hand firmly. On Drexen 5, mechanics are honored warriors. They battle entropy itself. Tiff grinned. I think we'll get along just fine. Want to see what this baby can do? Prillinson approached the vehicle cautiously. This conveyance appears experimental. Every great adventure requires experimental transportation, Jay declared, still filming. That's why I've named her the Truth Seeker. Her actual designation is the XTV-9, Kyle corrected hastily. And she's been thoroughly tested for safety. Tiff coughed. Well, thoroughly might be overstating it, but she won't explode. Probably. Vel's rocky features shifted into what might have been a smile. Perhaps Earth has potential after all. As they boarded the vehicle, Kyle reviewed the itinerary on his tablet. First stop, the Himalayas. For high-altitude wingsuit racing against the region's enhanced snow leopards, a controversial conservation program that had resulted in predators capable of short-distance gliding between mountain peaks. If they survived that, the real tests would begin. The Chaos Caravan lived up to its name during the hypersonic flight to the Himalayan base camp. While designed primarily as a ground vehicle, Tiff had insisted on adding atmospheric transition capabilities, a euphemism for what amounted to barely controlled rocket propulsion. Is this typical Earth transportation? Prillinson asked, six-fingered hands clutching the safety harness as the caravan shuddered through the upper atmosphere. Absolutely not, Kyle assured him, his own knuckles white on the armrests. Absolutely yes, Jay countered enthusiastically, somehow managing to operate 3 cameras simultaneously despite the G-forces. Humans love to go fast. The faster and more dangerous, the better. Tiff's laughter from the pilot's seat did nothing to reassure Kyle. We're pushing Mach 8.5, she announced proudly. New personal record. Vel, surprisingly, seemed completely at ease. The vibration reminds me of the seasonal quakes on Drexen 5, he observed. Though your vehicle lacks proper impact stabilization. Impact, Kyle repeated weakly. Landing is just controlled crashing. Tiff called back cheerfully as the Himalayan peaks came into view. Brace for atmospheric re-entry. What followed was a descent that Kyle was certain would feature prominently in his nightmares for years to come. The caravan's external temperature gauge climbed to numbers he hadn't known existed. The meta-alloy hull glowed cherry red, and the entire vehicle screamed like a wounded animal as they plummeted toward Earth. Somehow, through either engineering genius or sheer luck, Tiff managed to land the caravan on the specialized runway at the Himalayan Extreme Sports Center with most of its components still attached. Welcome to the roof of the world, she announced, powering down engines that were making alarming ticking sounds as they cooled. Current elevation, 19,032 feet. Atmospheric oxygen content, seriously inadequate. External temperature, cold enough to freeze your eyeballs if you blink too slowly. Delightful, Prillinson wheezed, his scales having shifted to a pale blue that Kyle suspected indicated stress. Vel, however, was already unbuckling his harness. These conditions are mild compared to the acid highlands of my homeworld. He paused, then added with what might have been respect. Though your method of arrival was impressively reckless. Jay was already uploading footage. The feed is going viral, he announced. 17 million concurrent viewers and climbing. The hashtag #Yas Alien Challenge is trending globally. Kyle's tablet chimed with a message from Director Crackstill. Bureau monitoring public response. Proceed with caution. Try not to kill our guests. So, Kyle cleared his throat. The first trial involves wingsuit racing. It's a popular extreme sport here on Earth, combining the thrill of free fall with precision flying through difficult terrain. We've arranged a special exhibition, Tiff added, leading them toward the center's main building. Our best human flyers against the mountain's apex predators. You race against predators? Prillinson's recording device whirred frantically. The snow leopards were part of a genetic restoration project, Kyle explained. They developed limited gliding capabilities as an adaptation to the mountain environment. A predator that flies, Vel nodded approvingly. This I must witness. The center's director, a weathered woman named Amara with more broken bones in her medical history than Kyle cared to contemplate, greeted them at the entrance. Perfect conditions today, she announced. Thin air, treacherous updrafts, and visibility just poor enough to keep things interesting. Is poor visibility considered an advantage? Prillinson asked. It separates the elite from the merely suicidal. Amara replied with a grin. Your timing is excellent. The leopards are particularly feisty this morning. As if on cue, a deep, rumbling growl echoed from somewhere above them. Kyle looked up to see massive enclosures built into the mountainside, where shadowy forms prowled with predatory grace. Those cages seem inadequate, he observed nervously. They're not cages, they're starting gates. Amara corrected. The leopards are partners in this event, not prisoners. They compete for territory rights and premium breeding opportunities. Your planet allows apex predators to determine their social hierarchy through organized competition with humans? Vel's tone was difficult to interpret, but Kyle thought he detected a note of approval. It's a unique conservation model. Kyle acknowledged. The leopards get to exercise their natural hunting instincts in a controlled environment, and humans get to test themselves against nature's perfect predators. Without actual death, Prillinson clarified hopefully. Amara's smile didn't reach her eyes. We do our best. The observation deck provided a panoramic view of the course, a terrifying descent through jagged peaks, narrow gorges, and unpredictable wind tunnels. Far below, a small landing zone was marked with bright flags. Our champions will demonstrate first, Amara explained as 6 humans in sleek wingsuits approached the jump platform. Then, if you're interested, we can outfit you for an attempt. Us? Kyle squeaked. The Alliance observers require first-hand experience, Vel stated, 4 eyes fixed on the course with predatory interest. I will participate. I will document. Prillinson decided quickly. Jay's camera drones hovered excitedly. This is amazing. Alien versus leopard, the ultimate showdown. That's not exactly, Kyle began, but was interrupted by a klaxon. The human wingsuit pilots leapt from the platform in perfect formation, their suits inflating as they caught the wind. Simultaneously, the leopard gates opened, releasing 6 massive felines that unfolded membranous flaps between their legs as they leapt into the void. What followed was one of the most beautiful and terrifying aerial ballets Kyle had ever witnessed. The humans twisted and banked through the course with practiced precision, while the leopards, displaying a natural grace that technology could never match, seemed to flow around obstacles like living smoke. Magnificent, Vel breathed, all 4 eyes tracking different participants. They dance with gravity itself. The leopards are gaining, Tiff pointed out as the race progressed. They always start slower but make up ground in the technical sections. Sure enough, the lead leopard was closing on the foremost human, a Brazilian champion whose distinctive red suit flashed between rock formations at impossible speeds. As they entered a narrow gorge, the leopard executed a tight spiral that brought it alongside the human. For a breathtaking moment, predator and prey flew in perfect tandem, separated by mere meters of thin mountain air. The leopard turned its head to regard the human with ancient, golden eyes that held primordial intelligence. They're communicating, Prillinson whispered, recording device extended, not with words, but with movement. The gorge widened, and both competitors accelerated toward the final approach. The human pulled ahead by meters, then feet, then inches, until both crossed the landing threshold in what appeared to be a perfect tie. The observation deck erupted in cheers, and even Kyle found himself applauding. The race had been everything he'd hoped for, dangerous, beautiful, and quintessentially human in its controlled recklessness. Now, Amara turned to Vel with a predatory smile of her own. Shall we get you fitted for a suit? I still can't believe you actually jumped, Kyle said hours later as they loaded a surprisingly intact Vel back into the Chaos Caravan. The Drexen warrior had not only completed the course, but had done so with enough flair to earn reluctant respect from the leopards themselves. A warrior must experience battle to judge it fairly. Vel replied simply, though Kyle noticed his 4 eyes seemed brighter than before. Your gravity may be weak, but your winds have teeth. And what did you think, Prillinson? Tiff asked the documentation specialist, who had remained firmly on the observation deck throughout. I think humans are insane. Prillinson's crest fluttered rapidly. But perhaps that is not entirely a criticism. Jay was practically bouncing with excitement. The feeds are exploding. Your jump broke viewer records across 17 systems. Vel, you're a cross-species celebrity now. Fame is irrelevant. Vel dismissed, though he straightened perceptibly. The test was informative. Earth's predators are worthy adversaries, despite their size. Kyle checked the itinerary on his tablet. Our next destination is less about confrontation and more about exploration. We're heading to the Pacific Ring of Fire for some lava tube spelunking. Spelunking, Prillinson repeated the unfamiliar word. Cave exploration, Tiff explained, already programming the caravan's navigation system. Except these caves are formed by active volcanic processes. You voluntarily enter geological ruptures filled with molten planetary core material. Vel's tone suggested he might be reassessing his initial dismissal of Earth's challenges. With proper equipment and training, yes. Kyle nodded. It's considered an extreme sport, but also a scientific pursuit. Some of our most valuable geological discoveries have come from expeditions into active volcanic systems. Fascinating. Prillinson's scales shifted to an excited orange hue. On my world, we worship volcanoes from a distance of no less than 20 kilometers. On Earth, we paddle boats across lava lakes and roast marshmallows over fumaroles. Jay added cheerfully. It's a whole subculture. As the Chaos Caravan rumbled to life, Kyle felt a cautious optimism. The wingsuit trial had gone better than expected, and both observers seemed genuinely intrigued by human risk-taking behavior. Perhaps this crazy plan might actually work. Orbital trajectory or scenic route, Tiff called from the pilot's seat. Scenic, Kyle decided, noticing how Prillinson was eagerly recording the mountain landscape. Let's show our guests the diversity of Earth's environments. Scenic it is, Tiff confirmed, engaging the caravan's ground propulsion system. Next stop, Mount Rainier Magma Research Station. Estimated arrival, 7 hours if we stick to legal speed limits. And if we don't? Vel inquired, with what Kyle was alarmed to recognize as enthusiasm. Tiff's grin was visible in the rearview mirror. Then we're in for one hell of a ride. The Pacific Northwest greeted them with uncharacteristically clear skies and a perfect view of Mount Rainier's imposing silhouette. The volcano, dormant for centuries, had experienced a scientific awakening in the mid-21st century when a moderate seismic event revealed an extensive network of previously unknown lava tubes and magma chambers. The Rainier Complex is now the premier volcanic research facility in the world, Kyle explained, as Tiff navigated the Chaos Caravan up a winding mountain road. Scientists study the Earth's internal processes here, while extreme tourism provides additional funding. Your species harnesses active geological instability for both knowledge and recreation? Prillinson's scales had taken on a scholarly violet hue. The risk assessment protocols must be fascinating. Risk assessment? Jay snorted. More like, how close can we get before we melt? Kyle shot him a warning look. There are very strict safety protocols, which get ignored by thrill seekers about as often as they're followed. Tiff added unhelpfully. The death count is surprisingly low, though. Death count? Prillinson's crest flattened. No more than a dozen fatalities annually, Kyle assured him, then winced as he realized how that sounded. Vel leaned forward. You track recreational deaths as performance metrics? Not exactly, Kyle hedged. Absolutely, Jay contradicted. The most dangerous activities get the most prestige. It's basic human culture. To Kyle's surprise, Both aliens nodded as if this made perfect sense. On Drexen 5, Vel offered, warriors receive rank based on the lethality of the environments they have conquered. And my people, Prillinson added, award academic standing based on the rarity and danger of the phenomena documented. Kyle made a mental note of this unexpected common ground as the caravan pulled into the research station's visitor center. The facility was an architectural marvel, built partially into the mountain itself, with transparent observation domes offering views of both the summit crater and the subterranean magma chambers. Dr. Eleanor Samuels, the station's director, greeted them at the entrance. Her weathered face and specialized exoskeleton supporting her lower body told its own story of volcanic exploration. Welcome to the heart of the Earth, she said, bypassing conventional pleasantries. You're just in time. We're preparing for a deep chamber expedition to study a newly formed lava tube. If you're interested, there are 4 spaces available on the descent team. We're very interested, Kyle confirmed. Our Alliance observers are evaluating Earth's relationship with extreme environments. Dr. Samuels eyed the aliens appraisingly. We'll need to modify the thermal suits for your physiologies. The chambers reach temperatures of over 500 degrees Celsius, with toxic gas concentrations that would melt standard equipment. My homeworld has similar conditions near the surface, Vel noted. Though we typically avoid rather than seek them out. That's where humans differ. Dr. Samuels smiled. We see a bottomless pit of molten rock and think, I wonder what's down there. A commendable scientific curiosity, Prillinson observed. Oh, it's not just scientists. Jay piped up, his drones already capturing panoramic footage of the facility. Honeymooners come here for extreme wedding photos. There's a whole social media challenge about getting the perfect selfie with active magma flows. Dr. Samuels sighed. Unfortunately true. We've had to rescue more influencers than researchers over the years. As they were fitted for specialized thermal suits, Kyle noticed that even Tiff seemed impressed by the equipment. The suits were marvels of engineering, lightweight but capable of withstanding extreme conditions, with integrated sensors, communication systems, and emergency extraction protocols. These are military-grade, Tiff observed, examining the articulated joints. Better than what I use for the magma run. They have to be, Dr. Samuels replied. Where we're going, equipment failure means death. Quick, painful death. Excellent motivation for quality control, Vel approved, testing the movement of his modified suit. Once they were fully equipped, Dr. Samuels led them to the descent platform, a reinforced elevator that would take them into the heart of the mountain. 2 other researchers joined them, both bearing the calm demeanor of those accustomed to routine brushes with death. Final safety briefing, Dr. Samuels announced as the platform began its descent. The chambers we're visiting were formed just 3 weeks ago. They're highly unstable and could collapse at any moment. Toxic gas pockets can form without warning. Magma flows can change direction in seconds. If your suit integrity drops below 85%, your emergency extraction will activate automatically. What does extraction entail? Kyle asked nervously. Your suit essentially becomes a rocket. One of the researchers explained. It blasts you up the nearest vertical shaft toward the surface. Has that ever failed? Prillinson inquired. Only once, Dr. Samuels said grimly. We don't use that design anymore. The elevator descended through layers of rock, the temperature rising noticeably with each meter. Through transparent sections of the shaft, they could see the mountain's internal structure, ancient lava flows frozen in time, crystal formations glittering in the lights of the elevator, and occasional glimpses of distant, ominous red glows. We are inside a planetary crust rupture, Prillinson observed, his recording device working overtime, voluntarily. Wait until you see the main chamber, Dr. Samuels promised. It's like standing at the entrance to hell, if hell were scientifically fascinating. The elevator slowed and finally stopped at a reinforced platform extending into what could only be described as a cathedral of fire. The chamber was enormous, at least 100 meters high, with a lake of bubbling magma forming its floor. Across the crimson-lit expanse, multiple lava tubes opened like the throats of mythological beasts, some actively flowing with molten rock, others dark and mysterious. By the 7 moons, Prillinson breathed, his scales shifting through colors faster than Kyle could identify them. Even Vel seemed momentarily speechless, all 4 eyes wide as they took in the primordial scene. This. Dr. Samuels gestured to the nearest tube, a relatively stable-looking tunnel with a narrow catwalk extending into it. Is our destination. We've detected unusual mineral formations about 300 meters in. We're going in there? Kyle couldn't keep the apprehension from his voice. Of course. Dr. Samuels began leading the way. The real discoveries are never at the entrance. Jay's drones spread out, capturing the expedition from multiple angles. This is reality gold, he enthused. The feed just hit 30 million concurrent viewers. The journey into the lava tube was like entering another world. The walls pulsed with heat, occasionally weeping molten stone that dripped into the churning flow beneath the catwalk. The air, despite being filtered through their suits, tasted of sulfur and metal. Every few minutes, the mountain itself seemed to breathe, subtle expansions and contractions that sent tremors through the tube. Are those normal? Kyle asked after a particularly strong vibration. Completely normal, Dr. Samuels assured him. If the tremors stop, that's when we worry. Because it means a major pressure buildup, one of the researchers explained cheerfully, usually followed by a catastrophic eruption. Your species does this for knowledge alone? Vel asked, navigating the narrow catwalk with surprising grace for his size. Knowledge, adventure, bragging rights. Dr. Samuels shrugged. Everyone has their reasons. As they reached the 300-meter mark, the tube widened into a small chamber. And there, crystallized along the walls in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, were the mineral formations they had come to study. Incredible. Dr. Samuels approached one of the larger formations. These are completely new to science. The crystalline structure shouldn't be possible under these conditions. While the scientist took samples and readings, Kyle noticed Prillinson studying the chamber with intense focus. These formations, the alien said quietly, resemble communication nodes on my world, ancient ones, from before our technological age. Before Kyle could inquire further, a violent tremor shook the chamber. Unlike the previous vibrations, this one didn't subside. The catwalk swayed dangerously, and pieces of the ceiling began to fall. Pressure spike, one of the researchers shouted, checking a handheld device. Massive gas buildup in the adjacent chamber. Extraction protocol, Dr. Samuels commanded, already activating her suit's emergency systems. Everyone out, now. The scientists didn't hesitate, their suits transforming as emergency propulsion units deployed. With controlled bursts, they shot upward through a natural chimney in the chamber's ceiling. Follow them, Kyle urged the aliens, activating his own extraction system. Prillinson complied immediately, his lighter form accelerating rapidly towards safety. But Vel hesitated, looking at something on the far side of the chamber. There, he pointed with a massive hand. A perfect crystal formation, untouched. No time, Kyle shouted as the tremors intensified. The magma level below was rising rapidly, and toxic gas alarms blared in his helmet. To his horror, Vel leapt across the chamber, landing with precision next to the crystal formation. With careful but quick movements, the alien warrior extracted the formation intact. Vel, Kyle called desperately as his suit warned of imminent automatic extraction. The Drexen warrior turned, all 4 eyes calm despite the chaos around them. With a powerful leap that would have been impossible on his high-gravity homeworld, Vel launched himself back across the collapsing chamber, crystal clutched securely. Just as he landed beside Kyle, both their suits activated emergency protocols. Propulsion units fired, and they shot upward through the chimney as the chamber below filled with superheated gas and magma. The extraction was brutal, a controlled but desperate ascent through irregular volcanic shafts, with multiple course corrections as the mountain shifted around them. Kyle lost track of time, focusing only on the diminishing heat and the gradual return of stability as they neared the surface. Finally, They burst into the open air of the research station's emergency extraction zone, landing roughly but safely on impact-absorbing pads. Medical teams rushed forward, but Kyle waved them off, his attention fixed on Vel. The alien warrior stood slowly, suit scorched and damaged but intact. In his massive hands, he still clutched the crystal formation, now glowing with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "You risked extraction failure for a rock sample," Kyle asked incredulously once they had been cleared by medical. "Not for the sample," Vel corrected, carefully transferring the crystal to a containment unit provided by an eager Dr. Samuels. "For the knowledge it represents. For the story it tells." He looked at Kyle with what might have been respect. "Is that not why your people enter the fire willingly? To bring back stories?" Before Kyle could respond, Jay bounded over, practically vibrating with excitement. "That was epic!" he exclaimed. "The feeds crashed from overload when you made that jump. Vel, the Alliance networks are calling it the Leap of Drexen. You're trending across 17 systems." "The specimen is remarkable," Dr. Samuels added, already examining the crystal through specialized equipment. "Prillinson may be right about its communicative properties. This could revolutionize our understanding of geological information storage." As they made their way back to the Chaos Caravan, Kyle found himself walking alongside Vel. "You enjoyed that," he observed cautiously. "On my world," Vel replied after a moment. "We face danger because we must. Here, you face it because you choose to. There is honor in that choice." It wasn't quite endorsement, but it was progress. Kyle allowed himself a small smile as they boarded the caravan for their next destination. The Mariana Research Station floated like a massive technological water lily above the deepest point in Earth's oceans. Its central hub extended tentacle-like structures deep into the abyss, while the surface facility housed hundreds of scientists, engineers, and, increasingly, extreme tourism enthusiasts. The Challenger Deep was once considered the final frontier of Earth exploration. Kyle explained as their submersible detached from the Chaos Caravan's aquatic deployment bay. Tiff had, of course, insisted that her vehicle be fully amphibious. Now it's the site of regular expeditions to study one of the most alien environments on our planet. Your oceans contain more extreme conditions than your land masses, Prillinson observed, six-fingered hands pressed against the submersible's viewport as they descended through increasingly darker waters. "The pressure at our destination is over 1,000 times your standard atmospheric pressure," Tiff confirmed from the pilot's seat. "The submersible is designed to withstand it, but outside those windows is enough force to crush you to the size of a grape." "Yet humans go there willingly," Vel noted, "without evolutionary adaptations for such environments." "That's kind of our whole thing," Jay said, adjusting his camera drones for deep water operation. "Finding places we absolutely shouldn't survive, and then figuring out how to not only survive, but throw parties there." As they descended further, the outside world transformed. Sunlight faded until only the submersible's powerful lights illuminated their surroundings. Strange creatures, transparent or bearing bioluminescent patterns, drifted past the viewports. "We're approaching the Phantom Trench," announced Dr. Marina Chen, the expedition's scientific lead. "It's a recently discovered formation within the Challenger Deep, possibly created by tectonic activity within the last decade." "What makes it special?" Kyle asked, reviewing the briefing materials on his tablet. "It's home to an entirely unique ecosystem," Dr. Chen replied, her enthusiasm evident. "Organisms that exist nowhere else on Earth, adapted to conditions that should make life impossible." "Like extremophile microbes?" Prillinson inquired, recording device capturing every word. "Much more complex than that," Dr. Chen smiled. "You'll see soon enough." The submersible's lights caught the edge of what appeared to be a massive underwater canyon. Unlike the surrounding seafloor, the trench walls were smooth, almost polished, descending into darkness beyond the reach of their illumination. "Beginning final descent," Tiff announced, guiding the craft into the trench. "Current depth, 10,925 meters. External pressure, crushing. Water temperature, just above freezing. visibility, limited to our immediate light field. And people do this for fun? Prillinson's scales had taken on a deep blue hue. Rich people do this for bragging rights, Jay corrected. Scientists do it for discovery, military does it for strategic advantage. But yeah, basically for fun. As they descended deeper into the trench, the smooth walls gave way to something entirely unexpected. A forest of crystalline structures that rose from the seafloor like alien skyscrapers. Each formation glowed with internal bioluminescence, creating a surreal underwater cityscape. The phantom forest, Dr. Chen whispered reverently. Isn't it beautiful? Even Vel seemed impressed, all four eyes wide as they took in the impossible landscape. These formations, Prillinson leaned closer to the viewport. They're biological? Partially, Dr. Chen explained. They're a symbiotic relationship between mineral deposits and a previously unknown type of deep-sea coral. The coral provides the luminescence, while the minerals create the structure. And the movement? Vel asked sharply. Movement, Kyle repeated, then froze as he noticed what the alien warrior had spotted. The crystalline structures weren't static. They swayed, not with ocean currents, but with deliberate, rhythmic patterns. And around them, massive shadowy forms moved with predatory grace. Ah, yes. Dr. Chen smiled. The phantom predators. They're what we've come to study. As if on cue, one of the shadows moved into the submersible's light field, revealing a creature that defied easy classification. Nearly 20 meters long, it resembled an aquatic feline crossed with a deep-sea eel. Its body was sleek and powerful, covered in scales that shifted like oil on water. Multiple rows of bioluminescent spots ran along its flanks, pulsing in complex patterns. Magnificent, Prillinson breathed, recording device whirring frantically. What exactly is it? Kyle asked, unable to tear his eyes from the creature as it circled their submersible with obvious curiosity. We call them abyssal panthers, Dr. Chen replied. They're apex predators, highly intelligent, and extremely territorial. This region contains a pod of approximately 30 individuals. And we're in their territory, Vel observed calmly. Precisely, Dr. Chen confirmed, which is why we've brought specialized equipment. She gestured to what looked like modified diving suits hanging in the submersible's equipment bay. You can't be serious. Kyle stared at the suits. Those are designed for shallow water diving, not the crushing depths of the Mariana Trench. They've been significantly enhanced, Dr. Chen assured him, reinforced with metamaterials that distribute pressure evenly across the body. The helmets generate localized force fields that further reduce pressure effects. Still, Kyle protested, the risk is… Exactly the point, isn't it? Vel interrupted, already moving toward the suits. Your mission is to demonstrate that humans voluntarily seek extreme conditions. What could be more extreme than swimming among apex predators in an environment that should crush you instantly? Put that way, Kyle couldn't argue. Who exactly will be participating in this? Swim. I've completed 17 deep dives in the Phantom Trench, Dr. Chen said, beginning to don one of the suits. I'll lead. We have 3 additional suits for volunteers. I will join, Vel decided immediately. As will I, Prillinson added, to Kyle's surprise. Such an opportunity for direct documentation may never arise again. Jay looked torn, glancing between his drones and the remaining suit. The footage would be insane, but… I'll go, Tiff announced, setting the submersible's systems to autopilot. Someone with mechanical expertise should be out there in case something goes wrong with the suits. Which leaves me in here to coordinate, Jay decided, visibly relieved. I'll deploy the full drone swarm for maximum coverage. Kyle watched with mounting anxiety as the 4 prepared for what could generously be called a suicidal excursion. The suits, despite Dr. Chen's assurances, looked horrifyingly inadequate for the conditions outside. The procedure is straightforward, Dr. Chen explained as they completed final checks. We exit through the airlock one at a time. The external pressure will feel intense but not painful if the suits are functioning correctly. Maintain visual contact with the submersible and with each other at all times. The panthers are curious but not typically aggressive unless provoked. Define provoked, Tiff requested reasonably. Sudden movements, direct eye contact, or interference with their feeding behaviors. Dr. Chen listed, basically, don't act like prey and don't challenge them as competitors. Treat them as equals, Vel nodded understanding. As fellow apex predators. Exactly, Dr. Chen smiled. Ready? The airlock cycling process was agonizing to watch. Each time the outer door opened, Kyle expected to see the suit implode under the immense pressure, but the metamaterials performed as designed, adjusting and distributing forces in ways that conventional physics suggested should be impossible. One by one, they exited, first Dr. Chen, then Vel, followed by Prillinson, and finally, Tiff. Jay's drones swarmed out with them, creating a sphere of mobile cameras that captured every angle of the unprecedented event. Through the viewports and the drone feeds displayed on the submersible's monitors, Kyle watched as the four figures drifted among the crystalline forest. Their suit lights combined with the natural bioluminescence created an ethereal glow, silhouetting them against the alien landscape. The abyssal panthers, initially cautious, began to approach. They moved with impossible grace, their massive bodies somehow conveying both power and delicacy as they weaved between the crystal formations. Heart rates stable across all participants, Jay reported, monitoring the suit telemetry. Even Prillinson seems to be enjoying himself. Indeed, the documentation specialist was recording everything, his six-limbed suit allowing him to operate multiple devices simultaneously while maintaining position in the water. Vel, unsurprisingly, had attracted the attention of what appeared to be the largest panther. The creature circled the Drexen warrior, bioluminescent patterns shifting rapidly. After several tense moments, Vel extended a hand, palm open, a universal gesture of peaceful intent. The panther approached slowly, its massive head larger than Vel's entire torso. It extended sensory appendages that Kyle hadn't noticed before, delicate tendrils that reached toward the alien's outstretched hand. Is it tasting him? Kyle asked incredulously. More like reading him. Dr. Chen's voice came through the communication system. We believe the panthers communicate through bioelectric fields. They're trying to understand what he is. For a breathtaking moment, the massive predator and the alien warrior connected, not just physically, but in some deeper, more fundamental way that transcended species barriers. Then, without warning, the entire trench shuddered. Alarms blared throughout the submersible as external sensors detected a massive seismic event. The crystal formations swayed violently, some breaking free from their moorings and drifting upward. Earthquake, Jay shouted unnecessarily. Magnitude. The sensors can't even classify it. Everyone back to the submersible, Kyle ordered through the communication system. Now. The panthers scattered, their orderly movements giving way to instinctual flight as the seafloor continued to shake. The crystal forest was breaking apart, massive fragments creating a deadly underwater hailstorm. Dr. Chen reacted first, propelling herself toward the submersible with practiced efficiency. Tiff followed close behind, her engineer's precision evident even in crisis. Prillinson, despite his academic background, showed surprising adaptability, using all six limbs to navigate the chaos. But Vel had drifted further from the submersible than the others, and the collapsing trench was rapidly separating him from safety. Vel, Kyle called desperately. Your suit has emergency propulsion. Activate it now. Through the drone feeds, Kyle watched as the Drexen warrior assessed his situation with remarkable calm. Instead of heading directly for the submersible, a path now blocked by falling crystal debris, Vel oriented himself toward the surface. What is he doing? Jay asked, frantically trying to keep drones focused on the alien. The smart thing. Tiff's voice came through the communication system as she reached the airlock. The trench walls are collapsing inward. If he tries to cross horizontally, he'll be crushed. As Dr. Chen and Prillinson reached the airlock, Kyle watched Vel activate his suit's emergency systems. With a burst of power that would have killed an unprotected human, the Drexen warrior shot upward, navigating through gaps in the falling debris with precision that spoke of a lifetime of combat training. "Can we reach him?" Kyle asked Tiff as she re-entered the submersible. "Not directly," she replied, quickly shedding her suit and rushing to the controls. "But I can get us out of this death trap and rendezvous with him higher up." The submersible shuddered as Tiff engaged maximum thrust, pulling away from the collapsing trench. Through the rear viewports, Kyle watched the phantom forest disappear as tons of rock and sediment filled the once magnificent formation. "Tracking Vel's ascent," Jay reported, fingers flying across monitoring systems. "He's rising faster than we are. That suit's emergency system is no joke." "It wasn't designed for this," Dr. Chen warned, checking data on her tablet. "The pressure differentials during rapid ascent could tear it apart." "Vel knows what he's doing," Prillinson said quietly. "He's survived worse on Drexen 5. The ascent seemed to take forever, the submersible fighting against currents created by the massive seafloor disruption below, every few hundred meters. Tiff adjusted their course based on Jay's tracking data, attempting to intercept Vel's projected path. "There!" Jay suddenly pointed to one of the drone feeds. 2,000 meters ahead, bearing 045. Through the murky water, they could just make out a humanoid figure rising steadily through the darkness. The suit's lights flickered erratically, suggesting power systems on the verge of failure. "Intercept course plotted," Tiff announced, pushing the submersible to speeds Kyle suspected exceeded its design parameters. ETA 45 seconds. As they closed the distance, the external cameras provided a clearer view of Vel's condition. The suit had partially collapsed under the stress of rapid pressure changes, and the helmet's force field flickered dangerously. "External retrieval system ready," Dr. Chen reported, activating a mechanical arm mounted on the submersible's hull. "One chance at this. We have to match his velocity perfectly." Tiff's hands danced across the controls, minute adjustments bringing the submersible alongside the rising alien. The mechanical arm extended, its grapple designed to secure a pressure suit without damaging it further. "Steady," Dr. Chen murmured, operating the arm with practiced precision. "Almost." With a solid thunk that resonated through the hull, the grapple secured around Vel's midsection. Immediately, the retrieval system activated, drawing the Drexen warrior toward the emergency airlock. "Got him!" Jay exclaimed, drones capturing the moment from multiple angles. "The feed is going absolutely insane right now." The emergency extraction procedure was designed for worst-case scenarios, and it showed in its brutal efficiency. The moment Vel was inside the outer airlock, the system began an accelerated pressurization sequence that would have been fatal to most species. For the high-gravity adapted Drexen, however, it merely resulted in what Kyle hoped was temporary unconsciousness. When the inner airlock finally opened, revealing Vel's massive form slumped on the deck, Kyle felt a moment of genuine fear. The Drexen scales had turned an alarming gray color, and none of his 4 eyes were open. Then, with a suddenness that made everyone jump, Vel sat upright, all 4 eyes open simultaneously, taking in the concerned faces around him. That, he announced with what might have been a smile, was worthy of song. The Chaos Caravan lumbered across the Nevada desert, meta-alloy hull gleaming under the merciless sun. After the near disaster in the Mariana Trench, Kyle had hoped for a more controlled final trial, perhaps a simulated extreme environment in one of the Bureau's testing facilities. But the universe, as it often did, had other plans. "Solar flare incoming," Jay announced, checking readings on his tablet. "Biggest one recorded this century. The magnetosphere is already compressing." "Perfect timing," Tiff said, far too cheerfully for Kyle's comfort. "We're heading right into the optimal viewing zone." "Optimal viewing zone?" Prillinson repeated nervously, his scales having never quite returned to their normal coloration after the underwater ordeal. "For a stellar radiation event?" "The Carson Sink Desert Array," Kyle explained, pulling up information on his tablet. "It's a research facility that studies solar-terrestrial interactions. They have specialized equipment for observing and measuring solar phenomena. And they're expecting us? Vel inquired, seeming fully recovered from his deep-sea adventure. Kyle hesitated. Not exactly. They're under evacuation orders due to the severity of the incoming flare. All non-essential personnel have been relocated to shielded facilities. Yet we drive toward it, Vel observed, with what Kyle was alarmed to recognize as approval. The Chaos Caravan has state-of-the-art radiation shielding, Tiff assured them, patting the dashboard affectionately. We'll be perfectly safe. Probably. Probably isn't a scientific measurement, Kyle pointed out. In chaos engineering, it absolutely is, Tiff countered. It means the odds are better than even. Jay, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly straightened. Picking up an emergency broadcast from the array. They've got people still on site, scientists who refuse to evacuate because they're running critical experiments. Stubborn academics. Prillinson's crest rose in what might have been professional solidarity. I approve. The broadcast says they're cut off, Jay continued, frowning at his screen. The evacuation vehicles left, and now the access road is blocked by debris from a micro-tornado spawned by the atmospheric disturbance. So they're trapped at the facility with a massive solar flare incoming, Kyle clarified, already seeing where this was heading. Pretty much, Jay confirmed. Their shielding will handle the radiation, but the electromagnetic pulse will fry their communications and probably their life support systems. Vel's 4 eyes focused on Kyle. Your species not only seeks danger for itself but rescues others from it. It's kind of our thing. Tiff agreed, already adjusting their course. We create problems, then solve them heroically, sometimes in that order. The Carson Sink Desert Array appeared on the horizon, a sprawling complex of massive satellite dishes, radio telescopes, and research buildings, all surrounded by a perimeter of what looked like lightning rods. As they approached, the sky above took on an unsettling green tinge, and static electricity made the hair on Kyle's arms stand on end. Atmospheric ionization is increasing, Jay reported, checking sensor readings. The flare's precursor particles are already hitting the upper atmosphere. How long until the main event? Kyle asked, mentally calculating evacuation timelines. 17 minutes, Jay replied grimly. Maybe less. The access road is definitely blocked, Tiff confirmed as they approached the facility. Looks like a small twister touched down and scattered a bunch of equipment across the only way in. Can we go around? Prillinson suggested. Not in time. Tiff shook her head. The terrain is too rough for the speed we'd need. Then we go through, Vel decided, as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. Tiff grinned. I like how you think. She turned to Kyle. The caravan's meta-alloy hull can reconfigure for impact. We ram the blockage, get to the scientists, load them up, and get out before the main flare hits. That's your plan? Kyle stared at her. Ram it? Sometimes the direct approach is best. Vel supported, securing himself in his seat. On Drexen 5, we call it the warrior's path. On Earth, we call it insane, Kyle muttered, but he was already fastening his safety harness. Do it! Tiff didn't need to be told twice. The Chaos Caravan's engines roared as she floored the accelerator, sending them hurtling toward the debris field, blocking the access road. The meta-alloy hull rippled, the front end reconfiguring into something resembling a battering ram. Impact in 3, 2, 1. Jay counted down, his drone swarm deploying to capture the collision from every angle. The caravan hit the blockage with enough force to send everyone lurching against their restraints. Metal screamed, debris flew, and for a heart-stopping moment, Kyle thought they might flip over. But Tiff's driving was precise despite its apparent recklessness. The caravan plowed through the worst of the obstruction and emerged on the other side with only cosmetic damage. See? She called back triumphantly. Direct approach. The main research building loomed ahead, its reinforced structure designed to withstand extreme weather, but not necessarily the full brunt of a solar superstorm. As they screeched to a halt at the entrance, Kyle could see frightened faces peering out through the windows. 14 minutes to flare peak, Jay warned as they piled out of the caravan. We need to move fast. The research team, 6 scientists of various specialties, were gathered in the main control room, surrounded by screens displaying alarming readings from the solar monitoring equipment. Who are you people? Demanded the lead researcher, a harried-looking woman with wild hair and wilder eyes. The evacuation transports left hours ago. We're your rescue committee, Tiff announced cheerfully. Nice blockade out there. Really artistic arrangement of debris. We have transport. Kyle cut in more diplomatically. The Chaos Caravan can get you to a safe distance before the flare peaks, but we need to leave immediately. Impossible. The researcher shook her head. We're in the middle of recording a once-in-a-century solar event. The data is invaluable. More valuable than your lives? Kyle asked incredulously. Science requires sacrifice, Prillinson observed, earning approving looks from the human researchers. How long would it take to download the critical data? Vel inquired practically. The lead researcher hesitated. 10 minutes for the core datasets, but the recording equipment needs to remain operational through the peak to capture the full event sequence. So someone would need to stay behind. Kyle understood immediately. Not happening. Wait, Jay interjected, examining the control systems. What if we reconfigured my drone swarm to maintain the recording equipment? They're hardened against EMP, designed for extreme environment documentation. The researcher looked skeptical. Your toys couldn't possibly. His toys documented a deep-sea earthquake and a high-altitude wingsuit race against genetically enhanced predators. Tiff interrupted. They'll handle your sun tantrum just fine. While Jay worked with the scientists to repurpose his drones, Kyle checked the time. 9 minutes until peak flare. We need to start loading people and essential equipment now. I will assist, Vel volunteered, easily lifting equipment that would have required 3 humans to move. The evacuation proceeded with surprising efficiency. The Chaos Caravan storage compartments reconfiguring to accommodate both passengers and critical scientific instruments. Prillinson proved unexpectedly helpful. His 6 limbs ideal for stabilizing delicate equipment during transport. Data transfer at 78%, Jay reported, fingers flying across multiple interfaces. Drone swarm reconfiguration complete. They'll maintain recording operations for approximately 22 minutes post-flare, assuming shield integrity holds. 5 minutes to peak. Tiff called from outside, where she was securing the last of the equipment. We need to go. People. The sky had transformed from unsettling green to a pulsing purple-red, with visible waves of energy rippling across the upper atmosphere. Static electricity had increased to the point where small objects were beginning to levitate, and the air tasted metallic. Data transfer complete, one of the scientists announced as the final pieces of equipment were loaded. Drone control handoff successful. Everyone in the caravan, now, Kyle ordered, ushering the last scientist toward the vehicle. As they piled in, Jay remained at the facility's main console, making final adjustments to his drone programming. Jay, Kyle called from the caravan's door. 3 minutes, we need to go. Almost done, Jay replied, not looking up. Just setting the transmission protocols to... A massive bolt of electricity struck one of the nearby lightning rods. The thunder clapped so loud it momentarily deafened everyone. The facility's lights flickered, then went out completely. Power failure, one of the scientists cried. The backup generators should... Another strike. Closer this time, and the ground itself seemed to shake. Jay, Kyle shouted again, preparing to run back into the building. But Vel was faster. The Drexen warrior sprinted into the darkened facility with surprising speed for his massive frame. Moments later, he emerged carrying Jay like a child, the human clutching his tablet protectively. The drones are operational, Jay reported as Vel deposited him in the caravan. They'll transmit data as long as they can. Good, because we're leaving, Tiff announced, already engaging the engines. 2 minutes to peak flare, and those lightning strikes are getting closer. The Chaos Caravan lurched into motion, its meta-alloy hull rippling as it accelerated away from the facility. Through the rear viewports, They could see the sky above the array transforming into something that belonged in a nightmare. Swirling colors, visible energy waves, and lightning that seemed to strike upward rather than down. This is amazing footage, Jay enthused, watching the feeds from his remaining drones. The viewers are going crazy. Speaking of crazy, Tiff called from the driver's seat. We've got company. Ahead of them, the desert floor was alive with swirling dust devils, miniature tornadoes spawned by the extreme atmospheric conditions. What had been clear terrain during their approach was now a maze of unpredictable, violently rotating columns of sand and debris. Can we go around them? Kyle asked, gripping his seat as the caravan swerved to avoid a particularly large formation. No time, Tiff replied grimly. 1 minute to peak flare. We need to find shelter or get at least 20 kilometers from the array. The scientists huddled together, expressions ranging from professional fascination to outright terror as they watched the atmospheric chaos through the viewports. Brillinson's scales had shifted to a pale yellow that Kyle suspected indicated extreme stress, while Vel merely observed the situation with the calm assessment of a veteran warrior. There, Jay suddenly pointed to a formation in the distance. Old mining tunnel entrance. The geological survey maps show it extends at least 100 meters into that ridge. Underground shelter. Tiff nodded approval, already adjusting their course. Good thinking. The Chaos Caravan hurtled toward the tunnel entrance, weaving between dust devils with increasing difficulty as the atmospheric disturbance intensified. The meta-alloy hull shimmered constantly now, adjusting to the electrical fields that surrounded them. 30 seconds, Jay warned as they approached the tunnel. The magnetic field is collapsing. Tiff pushed the caravan to its limits, the engine screaming in protest as they made the final approach. The tunnel entrance loomed ahead, a dark rectangle carved into the rocky ridge, barely wide enough to accommodate their vehicle. This is going to be tight, Tiff announced, hands steady on the controls. Everyone brace for impact. The caravan shot into the tunnel with centimeters to spare on either side, metal screeching against rock as the meta-alloy hull compressed to fit the confined space. They plunged into darkness, the only illumination coming from the vehicle's interior lights and the increasingly apocalyptic glow from outside. Deeper, Jay urged, checking readings on his tablet. We need at least 50 meters of solid rock between us and the surface. Tiff complied, pushing the caravan further into the ancient mining tunnel despite the obvious risk of collapse. The walls around them were far from stable, decades or perhaps centuries of neglect evident in the crumbling supports and loose rocks. This is far enough, Vel said suddenly, his 4 eyes focusing on something the humans couldn't see. The tunnel structure ahead is compromised. As if to confirm his assessment, a section of ceiling collapsed just meters in front of them, blocking any further progress. Peak flare in 3, 2, 1. Jay counted down, all eyes fixed on the tunnel entrance behind them. The world outside erupted in blinding light. Even at this distance and shielded by solid rock, the intensity was enough to make everyone flinch. The caravan's systems flickered, then stabilized as its shielding adjusted to the electromagnetic pulse. For several long moments, no one spoke. The only sound was the steady drip of water somewhere in the tunnel and the faint creaking of stressed metal as the caravan's hull cooled. Did we make it? One of the scientists finally asked. Checking systems, Tiff replied, running diagnostics. Shielding held at 82% integrity. Engine systems operational. Navigation, partially functional. Communications. Dead, Jay confirmed, checking his own equipment. Total blackout, as expected. But the localized mesh network is still up. My surviving drones are communicating with each other and the caravan. And the array data? The lead scientist asked anxiously. Jay grinned. Stored safely in multiple redundant systems. As soon as communications are restored, we can transmit it to your secure servers. The scientist's relief was palpable. You've saved years of research. I don't know how to thank you. Maybe start by explaining why you stayed behind when evacuation was ordered, Kyle suggested, though without real heat. The shared danger had created a certain camaraderie. Would you abandon your life's work? She challenged. We're studying solar-terrestrial interactions to develop better prediction and protection systems. The data from this flare could save millions of lives during future events. Noble risk, Vel observed approvingly. Seeking danger for the benefit of others. Speaking of risk, Tiff interjected, we should probably exit this unstable tunnel before it becomes our tomb. Backing the Chaos Caravan out proved nearly as challenging as entering had been. But Tiff managed it with the same precise recklessness that characterized all her driving. When they finally emerged into the open air, the landscape had been transformed. The dust devils were gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. The sky had cleared to a crystalline blue that seemed almost artificially perfect. In the distance, the Carson Sink Desert Array stood intact but clearly inactive, its massive dishes motionless under the now benign sun. Post-flare calm, one of the scientists explained, noticing their confusion. The atmosphere temporarily stabilizes after a major event. It won't last long. Secondary effects will begin within hours. Then we should get moving. Kyle decided. The Bureau will have emergency response teams deploying to affected areas. We need to get you all to the nearest operational facility. As they prepared to depart, Kyle noticed Vel and Prillinson standing apart from the group, conferring quietly. The documentation specialist's recording device was active, but pointed at the ground rather than at any of the humans or equipment. Is everything all right? Kyle approached cautiously. Prillinson's scales shifted to a formal blue pattern. We are preparing our preliminary assessment for the Alliance Council. Kyle's heart sank. In the chaos of the rescue operation, he'd almost forgotten the purpose of their journey. I understand. When will the final decision be made? It already has, Vel replied, all four eyes fixing on Kyle with an intensity that made him want to step back. We have sufficient evidence for classification. I see. Kyle tried to keep his voice neutral. And the verdict? Vel and Prillinson exchanged a look that Kyle couldn't interpret. Then, to his surprise, Prillinson's crest rose in what appeared to be amusement. Earth does not qualify as a death world, the documentation specialist announced formally. Before Kyle could process his disappointment, Vel continued. It exceeds standard classification parameters. We are recommending a new designation, Chaos World. Chaos World, Kyle repeated, uncertain whether this was better or worse than their previous status. A world whose inhabitants not only survive extreme conditions, but deliberately seek them out, create them when absent, and transform survival itself into cultural expression. Prillinson explained, recording device now capturing Kyle's reaction. It is a classification previously theoretical, but never observed. The Alliance has long debated whether such worlds could exist. Vel added, planets where the drive to challenge limits becomes itself an evolutionary advantage, where danger is not merely endured, but